Sleep deprivation. How just one more episode steals your joy, energy, and health. You're listening to Your Space Today, the podcast where we decode fatigue, stress, and burnout so you can rise again. Every Tuesday, we explore the hidden connections between your habits, your health, and your happiness, giving you the tools to take back your energy and your life. Hey there, welcome to Your Space Today. There's a pattern in modern life that's become so normal we barely notice it anymore. Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone at midnight, telling yourself, just 5 more minutes. Or you're 3 episodes deep into that series, even though tomorrow's alarm is set for 6 a.m. You know you should sleep, but after a long day of meetings and deadlines, this feels like your only personal time. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. About 1/3 of adults are living with chronic sleep deprivation right now. We're not talking about the occasional late night. We're talking about years of 6-hour nights that quietly steal our health, our mood, and our ability to feel joy. And most of us have no idea how much damage we're actually doing. Today, we're diving into what really happens when you shortchange your sleep night after night. No quick fixes, no magic pills, just the truth about what your body's trying to tell you. We'll explore why you can't stop reaching for snacks at 10 p.m., why you're so irritable lately, and why that growing belly won't budge no matter how hard you try. So grab your tea, settle in, and let's talk about the hidden thief that might be sabotaging your life. Before we go any further, I need to mention something important. Everything we're discussing today is for educational purposes only. This isn't medical advice. Think of it as information to help you have better conversations with your healthcare provider. So, with that said, let me share a story about Steve that might feel familiar. He's 50, successful by any measure. Good job, respected by his colleagues, the kind of guy who seems to have it all figured out. But every evening, he comes home absolutely drained. He drops his laptop bag by the door and tells himself he'll just decompress for a moment. Glass of whiskey, something salty from the cupboard. That moment turns into 3 episodes. Half a bag of chips, a couple cookies, and scrolling on his phone until well past midnight. Steve sleeps around 6 hours a night, sometimes less, and he's convinced himself this is just how life is at 50. In the morning, he drags himself out of bed, stares at his reflection, and notices that soft ring of fat around his stomach that wasn't there a few years ago. Coffee becomes his survival tool. By midday, he's already on his 2nd mug. On stressful days, he adds an energy drink just to get through the afternoon. He promises himself he'll get back in shape soon, after this project, after this quarter, after the next busy period. What Steve doesn't realize is that he's living in a chronic state of sleep deprivation. And this quiet thief is undermining his mood, his metabolism, his motivation, and his capacity for joy far more than he thinks. Now, here's what might surprise you. Steve's story isn't unusual at all. Research shows that even moderate, chronic sleep restriction, we're talking 5 to 6 hours instead of the recommended 7 to 9, impairs your attention, reaction time, and decision-making in ways comparable to having alcohol in your system. Think about that for a second. Studies found that being awake for 17 to 19 hours produced impairments similar to a blood alcohol level of around 0.05%. After 21 hours, about 0.08%. That's the legal limit for driving in many countries. Steve would never drive drunk, but he routinely expects his brain to handle complex decisions in a state of comparable cognitive impairment. Let me explain what's actually supposed to happen during a normal night of sleep, because understanding this changes everything. Healthy adult sleep moves in repeating cycles that last roughly 90 to 110 minutes. You go through 4 to 6 of these cycles per night. Each cycle includes non-rapid eye movement sleep. That's divided into stages N1, N2, and deep N3, and rapid eye movement sleep, which is REM sleep. Here's how it works. You drift through N1 into N2, down into deep N3, back to N2, then into REM. Then the pattern repeats. Now, in the first half of the night, your body spends more time in deep N3 sleep. This is crucial for physical restoration, immune function, and metabolic regulation. It's when your body does its repair work. In the second half of the night, REM periods become longer. That's when your brain processes emotions, consolidates learning, and sorts through memories. So when Steve cuts his sleep to about 6 hours, he's not just losing some time in bed. He's compressing and distorting these cycles. Shorter nights often mean less deep sleep and fewer full REM periods. His body gets less repair work done. His brain's emotional centers become less regulated. His memory and learning become less efficient. Over weeks and months, this pattern contributes to exactly what Steve experiences: the fatigue, the irritability, the weight gain, and that foggy sense that life is harder than it should be. Those missing hours aren't just lost time in bed, they're stolen repair cycles. Your body scheduled maintenance for 2 a.m. that never happened. And tomorrow, you'll pay the price in brain fog and bad decisions. Now, here's something fascinating that most people don't know. While you sleep, your brain is doing housework. I'm serious. During deep sleep, there's this remarkable waste clearance system called the glymphatic system. It becomes dramatically more active when you're sleeping. During sleep, the brain's interstitial space, that's the fluid-filled area between cells, actually expands. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to flow through brain tissue and help sweep away debris. We're talking about things like beta amyloid and tau proteins. These are found in increased amounts in several neurodegenerative conditions. The glymphatic system is most active during deep NREM sleep. When sleep is disrupted or insufficient, this clearance gets impaired. So when Steve consistently cuts his sleep to 6 hours, he's not just feeling foggy the next day. He might be missing out on brain maintenance that happens primarily during those lost hours of deep sleep. Now, this doesn't mean that a few short nights will cause dementia, but chronic sleep restriction over years is associated with a higher vulnerability to cognitive decline as you age. While you scroll at midnight, toxic waste is literally building up in your brain. The cleaning crew only works during deep sleep, and they're not coming back for a second shift tomorrow. Let's talk about how much sleep your body actually needs, because there's a lot of confusion about this. Most sleep experts and major sleep organizations suggest that adults function best with around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. There's some individual variation, sure, but within that range, your body has enough time to cycle through those 90 to 110-minute sleep cycles 4 to 6 times. You accumulate sufficient deep NREM sleep for physical repair and REM sleep for emotional and cognitive processing. In Steve's case, 6 hours means he's regularly missing at least one full cycle and cutting into the later REM-rich portion of the night. Even if he falls asleep quickly, his total deep sleep and REM sleep time are likely reduced. This contributes to problems with mood, concentration, metabolic health, and immune resilience. You don't have to be at zero sleep for these effects to appear. Repeated partial sleep restriction accumulates like a hidden debt in the brain and body. Now, let's talk about Steve's coping strategies, because this is where things get really interesting. From Steve's perspective, his habits make perfect sense. Coffee to wake up, an energy drink to push through the afternoon, whiskey at night to switch off. These feel like solutions. But from the body's perspective, each of these quietly deepens the problem. Let's start with coffee. We all love it, right? But here's what's actually happening. Caffeine blocks adenosine. That's a chemical that builds up in your brain during the day and signals sleepiness. Studies show that caffeine can increase the time it takes to fall asleep, reduce total sleep time, and decrease the proportion of deep, slow-wave sleep. This happens especially at higher doses and when consumed later in the day. A standard dose taken a few hours before bedtime can prolong sleep onset and increase wakefulness during the night, even when people still manage to fall asleep. For Steve, that second large coffee at 3 or 4 p.m., or an energy drink late in the afternoon, might feel harmless because he can still fall asleep eventually. But his sleep may be lighter, more fragmented, and less restorative. He just doesn't consciously connect those effects to the caffeine. Energy drinks are even trickier. They often contain high doses of caffeine along with sugar and other stimulants. Studies among university students found that more frequent energy drink intake is associated with poorer sleep quality, more insomnia symptoms, and shorter or more disrupted sleep. Steve reaches for an energy drink on especially hard days, telling himself he needs it to function. But over time, this extra stimulant input deepens his insomnia loop. Poor sleep leads to more tiredness, which leads to more stimulants, which then further erodes his ability to get the kind of deep, consolidated sleep his brain and body need. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Now, let's talk about that evening whiskey. Alcohol can make people feel drowsy and help them fall asleep faster. That's why Steve associates his evening drink with relaxing. It feels good at the moment. However, sleep research consistently finds that alcohol fragments sleep later in the night, reduces REM sleep, and increases awakenings as its sedative effect wears off. This pattern can leave people waking earlier than planned, feeling unrefreshed, and experiencing more daytime sleepiness, despite technically being in bed for enough hours. Steve's nightcap isn't a moral failure. It's a very human attempt to unwind after a demanding day. The difficulty is that for many people, alcohol quietly undermines the very thing they're trying to achieve: deeper, more restorative sleep. Let me introduce you to something I call the 4 Pillars Framework. It's my attempt to synthesize the research into a coherent model that makes the hidden connections visible and understandable. Just so we're clear, this framework is for educational use only. It's not a diagnostic or clinical tool. Your well-being rests on 4 foundation pillars: fuel, movement, mind, and rhythm. Sleep deprivation doesn't just affect one area. It systematically undermines all 4, creating a cascade where each falling pillar pulls the others down. Let me show you what I mean. First pillar, fuel. That's your nutrition and metabolism. When Steve sleeps poorly, his hunger signals shift. Research links insufficient sleep with increased ghrelin, that's the hormone that makes you feel hungry, and decreased leptin, which signals fullness. This is associated with stronger cravings for calorie-dense, processed foods, even when your body's actual energy needs are met. But the metabolic consequences go deeper. In experimental studies, even a single night of partial sleep deprivation has been associated with about a 20 to 25% reduction in insulin sensitivity in healthy adults. Repeated sleep restriction can further impair how tissues respond to insulin. What this means for Steve is that his body becomes less efficient at processing sugar from his blood. His pancreas must produce more insulin to achieve the same effect. Over time, this pattern contributes to increased abdominal fat and a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Large observational studies indicate that people who regularly sleep fewer than about 6 hours per night have a substantially elevated risk of diabetes compared to those sleeping 7 to 8 hours, even after accounting for diet and exercise. For Steve, this translates into those late-night trips to the kitchen, a preference for sweets and salty snacks in the evening, and gradual fat accumulation around the abdomen, despite periods of dieting. His body isn't simply undisciplined. It's responding to hormonal shifts and metabolic changes that make it harder to maintain a stable weight and healthy blood sugar levels when he's chronically tired. Second pillar, movement, your physical foundation. On paper, Steve could go to the gym before work or take a walk after dinner. In reality, chronic sleep loss makes movement feel like another impossible task. Sleep deprivation reduces exercise motivation, impairs coordination, and lengthens recovery time. This happens partly because deep sleep is when growth hormone is released and tissues repair. People who are chronically tired often adopt more sedentary patterns and postures that contribute to muscle tension and discomfort. Steve notices that his back feels stiff, his knees ache on the stairs, and his once fun weekend sports now feel like a risk rather than a release. The less he moves, the more sluggish and heavy he feels, which in turn makes movement even less appealing. Another vicious circle. Third pillar, mind, mental and emotional health. Sleep deprivation has powerful effects on emotional regulation and cognition. Experimental studies show that insufficient sleep impairs the function of brain regions involved in decision-making and self-control, while increasing reactivity in areas linked to fear and threat processing. People often report increased irritability, anxiety, negative thinking, and difficulty letting go of small worries. Steve recognizes himself in this pattern. He snaps at colleagues over minor mistakes. He ruminates late into the night about an offhand comment in a meeting. He struggles to concentrate on complex tasks that once felt easier. His world feels more threatening and less manageable, not because he's too sensitive, but because his sleep-deprived brain is primed to see and react to problems. That short fuse and spiral of negative thoughts, it's not a weakness. It's your sleep-deprived brain treating minor inconveniences like major threats. You're not too sensitive. Your emotional smoke detector is broken. The mental health consequences run deeper than day-to-day irritability. Long-term studies show a strong connection between chronic insomnia or short sleep and mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. People with persistent insomnia have a markedly higher likelihood of developing depression or anxiety disorders over time. Sleeping 6 hours or less is linked with an increased risk of later major depressive episodes. The relationship works both ways. Depression and anxiety can disrupt sleep, and disrupted sleep can trigger or worsen these conditions. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Fourth pillar, rhythm, daily habits and circadian health. On many nights, Steve stays up later than planned in what researchers call revenge bedtime procrastination. He's sacrificing sleep to reclaim some personal time after a day filled with obligations. He scrolls, streams, snacks, and tells himself that tomorrow he'll go to bed earlier. Over time, this pattern disrupts his internal clock. Chronic stress and late-night light exposure can alter cortisol rhythms, flattening the normal pattern of higher cortisol in the morning and lower levels at night. This makes it harder to fall asleep, harder to wake up, and easier to drift into irregular bedtimes and wake times that further fragment sleep. Steve's rhythm becomes a loop. Tired mornings, stimulant-heavy days, wired evenings, short and shallow nights. Now, we need to talk about something more sobering. Beyond the immediate fatigue and brain fog, chronic sleep deprivation casts a long shadow over your future health. The damage can accumulate in ways that extend far beyond feeling tired. Let's start with your immune system. Sleep doesn't just help lock in memories, it also supports immune memory. Research indicates that sleep deprivation weakens certain aspects of immune function, including responses to vaccination and the activity of natural killer cells. These are important for fighting off infections. Put simply, trying to fight off bugs while sleep-deprived is like trying to fight with one hand tied behind your back. Your heart is also under pressure. Sleep loss doesn't just make you tired, it alters how your cardiovascular system functions. Studies associate insufficient sleep with higher blood pressure, elevated heart rate, and increased inflammatory markers that can damage blood vessels. Adults who regularly sleep fewer than 6 hours per night have been shown to face a higher risk of developing hypertension, even after accounting for other risk factors. The mechanisms are complex but consistent. Sleep deprivation activates the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight-or-flight response. It elevates stress hormones like cortisol and norepinephrine. It disrupts the normal nighttime dip in blood pressure that healthy hearts need. Over time, this chronic activation can contribute to arterial stiffness, plaque buildup in arteries, and increased strain on the heart muscle itself. Large population studies report that people with chronic short sleep have elevated risks of coronary artery disease, heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and certain arrhythmias. Some research finds that adults sleeping 5 hours or less per night may have up to roughly double the risk of coronary artery calcium buildup. That's an early marker of heart disease, compared with those sleeping 7 to 8 hours. For Steve, this means that his chronic 6-hour nights aren't just making him tired. They may also be quietly increasing his risk of serious cardiovascular events in the years and decades ahead. The hours you steal from sleep aren't free. Your heart is paying the price in ways you can't yet feel. Every short night is a small withdrawal from your future health account. Steve has noticed other changes too. When he looks in the mirror, his skin looks duller, puffier around the eyes, and somehow older than it should. The fine lines around his eyes seem more pronounced. His complexion has lost some of its vitality. He attributes this to stress and aging, but lost sleep may also play a role. During sleep, particularly in the deep stages, your body increases production of collagen and elastin. Those are the structural proteins that help keep skin firm, elastic, and smooth. Growth hormone secretion peaks during deep sleep, driving tissue repair and cellular regeneration. When sleep is cut short or fragmented, this repair work is less complete. Research on sleep and skin health suggests that chronic poor sleep quality is associated with more visible signs of intrinsic aging, reduced skin barrier function, and slower recovery from stressors such as UV exposure. Elevated cortisol associated with sleep loss can contribute to collagen breakdown and dryness, leading to features like sagging, wrinkles, and a tired appearance over time. For Steve, Those extra episodes and late-night scrolling sessions aren't just stealing his energy. They may also be contributing to visible signs of premature skin aging. I want to share something with you that requires careful context. Throughout history, extreme sleep deprivation has been used as a form of torture, precisely because sleep is so fundamental to human functioning. Historical records document its use by various regimes and interrogators, who understood that preventing someone from sleeping for prolonged periods, often 72 hours or more of nearly continuous wakefulness, could severely impair a person's mental and physical resilience. This extreme form of sleep deprivation is fundamentally different from what most people experience in daily life. The torture scenario involves forced, near-total wakefulness under controlled conditions, often combined with physical stress, sensory manipulation, and psychological pressure. It's designed to cause maximum suffering and cognitive breakdown. It has been recognized as inhumane treatment by international conventions. Steve's situation is nowhere near this extreme, but the principle remains. Sleep is not optional. It's not a luxury or a convenience. It's a biological necessity so fundamental that its prolonged absence can be weaponized. When people routinely shortchange their sleep, even by seemingly modest amounts, they're working against a basic biological need. The consequences may unfold slowly rather than dramatically, but they are still real. Now, if Steve searches online for how to sleep better, he'll find quick tips everywhere. One perfect supplement, a special pillow, a blue light filter, a breathing technique. These can be useful tools, but here's the truth. Focusing on one small intervention while ignoring the broader system is like repainting a house with a cracked foundation. Research on behavior change suggests that complex, interconnected patterns like chronic sleep deprivation usually respond better to comprehensive approaches than to single strategies. That doesn't mean change must be huge or overwhelming. It means that sustainable progress often comes from understanding how different areas of our bodies interact and then making small, coordinated adjustments across them. When sleep problems persist despite lifestyle changes, clinical guidelines recommend specific therapies instead of relying primarily on medication. Organizations like the American College of Physicians and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommend cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, that's CBTI, as the first-line treatment for chronic insomnia. CBTI combines behavioral strategies like sleep restriction and stimulus control, cognitive therapy to address unhelpful thoughts about sleep, and education about sleep hygiene. Studies show that CBTI can produce results comparable to sleep medication, with fewer side effects and benefits that often last well beyond the end of treatment. This recommendation reflects an important truth. Medication can mask symptoms, while behavioral approaches address the underlying patterns that keep insomnia going. Many people improve after a short course of CBTI, learning skills they can use for the rest of their lives. That $1,000 smart mattress won't fix your 11 p.m. doom scrolling habit. Real sleep improvement isn't about buying solutions. It's about seeing the patterns you've been blind to. So here's what I want you to do. Rather than offering solutions right now, I'm inviting you into a 14-day self-observation challenge. The goal is not perfection, it's awareness. For the next 14 days, I want you to watch your life the way we observed Steve's life. Ask yourself these questions. What time do you actually fall asleep and wake up? Not just what time you go to bed and set the alarm. How many times do you wake during the night, even briefly? When during the day do you reach for coffee, energy drinks, or alcohol? How do you feel before and after? What and when do you eat in the evening, especially in the last 3 hours before bed? How much time do you spend in front of screens, phone, laptop, TV, in the 90 minutes before sleep? On the days after better sleep, what's different about your mood, focus, and food choices compared with the days after poor sleep? You can find a full 14-day sleep diary on our website for free. I strongly encourage you to try it. In just 2 weeks, you'll start to see patterns emerge, patterns that can be the basis for meaningful change. This diary is not a diagnostic tool. It's a place to gather clear evidence about the underlying patterns contributing to your sleep problems. Armed with this knowledge, it'll be easier to talk to a specialist and begin making small, conscious changes that can help you move toward more restorative sleep. I know it sounds like extra work. It's certainly easier to take a quick supplement. But if shortcuts really solved chronic sleep issues, the statistics about sleep problems wouldn't be so concerning. Current clinical recommendations emphasize changes in behavior and environment as a foundation for improving sleep disorders. So the work you put into identifying your saboteurs is unlikely to be wasted. It's often the first step toward lasting improvement. With this information, it also becomes easier for you to provide accurate, specific answers when speaking with your doctor. This can support faster diagnosis and appropriate treatment if necessary. This observation may reveal patterns you haven't noticed, just as Steve might suddenly see how often his just one drink and one more episode nights line up with his most exhausted mornings. By the end of these 14 days, you'll have something most people never possess: a clearer picture of your own sleep saboteurs. For some, it'll be late-night caffeine. For others, evening alcohol, irregular bedtimes, doom scrolling, or a heavy dinner right before lying down. For many, it'll be a combination that uniquely fits their life, just as Steve's pattern is uniquely his. I know we covered a lot today. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, that's completely normal. Understanding what's been happening to your body can be both empowering and sobering at the same time. But here's what gives me hope. You're here, listening to this. That means you're already taking the first step toward change. You're choosing to understand rather than just push through. That's powerful. This first episode ends with a promise, not a prescription. In the next episode, we'll walk through research-backed strategies for improving sleep, practical changes across the 4 pillars that align with current evidence and respect your individual circumstances. For now, the invitation is simple and powerful. Stop guessing, start knowing. Before trying to fix anything, get curious about what's really happening in your nights and days. Because, as Steve's story shows, the first step out of chronic sleep deprivation is seeing the pattern clearly enough that change becomes possible. The path forward isn't easy, but it's straightforward once you understand what you're working with. Every time you pause to notice something positive, every time you choose nourishment over convenience, every time you move your body with intention, every time you protect your sleep, these aren't acts of deprivation. They're acts of self-respect. You're choosing long-term vitality over short-term convenience. You can start right now. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not after the holidays, right now. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because, let's be honest, the perfect moment never comes. You have to create it. Your future self, the one who wakes up energized, who engages fully with life, who experiences genuine joy in daily moments, is waiting for you to take that first step. If you found value in today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you'd share it with friends or family who might be struggling with similar issues. Sometimes understanding that we're not alone in this struggle and that there are real, science-based explanations for what we're experiencing, that knowledge alone can be incredibly empowering. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I'll see you next Tuesday with the next episode in this series, where we'll dive deeper into one of these 4 pillars. Until then, take care of yourself. You deserve it. Your Space Today is published every Tuesday at 6 p.m. For detailed information, disclaimers, scientific references, visit the links below this podcast. This podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider regarding any health concerns